Floette. It's been 3,000 years. Alola Pokemon trainers, this is GatorEX, and today I just wanted to talk about AZ's Floette, or the Eternal Flower Floette. But before I begin, I just want to remind you that if you want to make sure you stay up to date with each new video as it's uploaded, this will also make sure that you don't accidentally get unsubscribed from the channel, as YouTube is currently going through some problems right now. Also, if you'd like to support the video, make sure you leave a like and a comment, because currently it seems like the algorithm is favoring interaction above anything else. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about Eternal Flower Floette. Now, we've known about this Pokemon for about 3 years now, ever since the release of Pokemon X and Y. It was the Floette that was owned by AZ and eventually came back to him at the very end of the game. Now, what's interesting is that once X and Y were released, data miners went through the entire game and discovered some interesting Pokemon. Amongst these were the legendaries Diancie, Hoopa, and Volcanion, as well as Eternal Flower Floette. Now, obviously, they had to create a model of the Eternal Flower Floette because it appears in several cutscenes, but the fact that they programmed exclusive stats and an exclusive move makes me a little more curious about this. Originally, we thought that Eternal Flower Floette would be available as a distribution, as well as all of the other legendaries that were data mined, but lo and behold, the end of X and Y came and we only got Diancie. It wasn't until the release of Oras that we got both Hoopa and then Volcanion, and on top of that, Volcanion was just made available only a few months ago. Now we've come to the release of Pokemon Sun and Moon, and there's been no word on Eternal Flower Floette. Pokemon has even moved on to the next legendary distribution in Magearna, which just started this week. So what does that mean for Eternal Flower Floette then? Was it ever meant to be a distributed Pokemon? Or for some reason was it necessary for them to construct stats and a specific move for a Pokemon in order to have it as a model? One idea that I had thought of is maybe we were meant to rematch AZ later on in the game, and he was going to use this Eternal Flower Floette with the exclusive move Light of Ruin. In all honesty, having a distribution event to give us, the player, an Eternal Flower Floette doesn't make very much sense, at least in terms of story and lore, because Floette was the Pokemon that AZ loved the most. It's a huge part of the story. He loved this Pokemon so much to the point where he wandered 3,000 years trying to find himself, and this Pokemon loved him back that it waited those 3,000 years until he finally became the man who he was before the war. Although another interesting thing, when I was talking about the possibility of revisiting Kalos in Sun and Moon, which as we now know is not going to happen, I did mention that if this does happen, then maybe that could reveal the secrets to AZ's Floette as well as Zygarde. But as we now know, Zygarde wasn't really handled with all that much respect, in my personal opinion at least. It was just kind of thrown in randomly into Sun and Moon as a little side event, and while yes, we do get to see now the complete form Zygarde, it doesn't get its own story or anything. While we do have the anime to fill in the story for Zygarde, the fact that such a seemingly important Pokemon would not be featured in the main story of a game is very surprising. I mean, Zygarde wasn't even explored until the next generation of games, and even then, it's just sort of a reference back to the last generation. Currently, we have no idea of whether or not a Z version was planned, and very likely it wasn't, but had it actually have come out, it would have tied together these loose ends. Had a Z version come out, it very likely would have been a sequel to X and Y, and we could have explored complete form Zygarde and then actually been able to receive Eternal Flower Floette in that game. It really just seems like a giant tease, or almost even a punishment. I mean, this year, Europe didn't get Sun and Moon until 5 days later, very likely because during X and Y, people in the area were getting the games a few days early, although that part is all just speculation. And then with Sun and Moon getting leaked earlier this year, 10 days before release date, people were getting banned who downloaded the illegal version. And I'm not completely sure how true this is, but there have been some minor stirrings about people getting banned off of GTS for trading a large amount of Gen Pokemon. Now obviously this is just a huge conspiracy theory stating that Game Freak would withhold Eternal Flower Floette from us, but still put it into the game, knowing that we would find it, but never actually receive it. What I think is most likely is that originally we were meant to be able to to rematch AZ. I mean, that battle with AZ at the very end of the game did not feel very complete, even though it's the battle that's meant to release him and turn him back into the guy who he used to be and reunite him with Floette. It was actually somewhat anticlimactic in my opinion. Much like the Professor Oak battle that was scrapped from the original Red and Blue games, I think we were supposed to be able to rematch AZ and he would have a full team of 6 Pokemon with Eternal Flower Floette being his ace. What's even weirder though is that the Eternal Flower appears in Oras in Sutopolis City. Now while it's meant to be more of an Easter egg stating that AZ visited Sutopolis City and gave this tree as well as that flower, it sort of made a lot of us think that we would be getting AZ's Floette as a distribution during the era of Oras. Now the last thing I want to think or talk about, there have been lots of talks and rumors lately of a game coming out for the Nintendo Switch that would be an alternate version to Sun and Moon called Pokemon Stars. Of course right now these are all rumors, but several of them are seeming very credible. Even if this game does come out and ends up being the third alternate version for Sun and Moon, I actually doubt that Eternal Flower Floette would make an appearance. Also, I'm not 100% sure because I can't find this information anywhere, but personally I do not even know if Eternal Flower Floette appears in the data mine for Sun and Moon. However, you may have to inform me in that area because again, I couldn't find any information on the topic. And we are currently in the pre-Pokebank era, but if any of that information comes out that Eternal Flower Floette does not appear in the files of Sun and Moon, then that would pretty much be the nail in the coffin. But the mystery of Eternal Flower Floette really is a strange one. Honestly, I was really looking forward to being able to obtain this Pokemon as part of some sort of event or some sort of extra battle, but now it only exists as a distant dream or a long forgotten secret. In all honesty, a lot of this actually kind of frustrates me because now there are questions that just go unanswered. Again, the main thing that's making me think they've completely forgotten about it is that we've already moved on to the Magearna distribution for Sun and Moon, and that we got the Volcanion distribution so late for Oras. Again, they did appear in the same movie, and they're kind of meant to be close to each other in terms of distribution. It still bums me out that Floette just never happened. Anyway, that's been it for this video. This was again a discussion one, very similar to the video I made about possibly returning to Kalos in Sun and Moon. Watched it before I made this one, and oh gosh, it's absolutely terrible just how low quality everything is. But if you enjoyed this video, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Also remember to leave a like. I'm gonna start setting like goals. Let's see if we can reach 30 likes for this video. And also I want to remind you that in comments, I will be gathering certain comments, and at the end of the month doing something like community shoutouts. And again, all of this is to combat the YouTube apocalypse that's going on right now, but it's a good opportunity for some actual interaction between all 2,000 of you guys and me. Anyway, this has been GatorEX. Have an eternal day.